Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. I am Rick, and I am joined today with Stig Johansen. Did I pronounce that properly?
Yeah,
Okay,
did it
great.
well enough.
Fair enough. As long as it's passable, as long as it doesn't offend you.
No, I don't get offended. It's
Or,
okay.
I
I've
don't
been
know.
called worse things than my name.
I'm sure that is true, but I don't know. There are definitely ways to offend somebody with the pronunciation of their name.
Oh, well, not here.
All right,
So,
perfect. Uh,
yeah,
so how are you doing?
doing quite well. Waking up. It's
Nice.
7:30 in the morning here in Norway, so um,
Bit of a
been
time zone
awake for
difference.
yeah,
So you are a very unique kind of designer that we have in the guild. You are actually a writer for Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. Is that correct?
yeah, kind of. Um, the
Don't be afraid of being
the
pedantic. Like if I got that wrong in any way,
no,
clear
you
the
you got
record.
it right, but it's
Okay.
not officially Dungeons and Dragons, I think, because it's not
Oh.
published by Wizards of the Coast.
Oh, I see.
It's yeah, it was a small um, fringe company that I worked for that made products that used the Dungeons and Dragons rules. So I was writing setting books and lore, adventure modules, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. How did that? How do you get into something like that? Like, did they find you, or did you apply for something, or were you writing beforehand? Like, how do you get into this sort of thing?
Um, by being Norwegian, uh, the guy was working on a Viking area of his, game world, and he started messaging me on Facebook, asking me how to pronounce this and that and how to translate it, and and he wanted to Skype with me to, so I could help him,
Mm.
and we did, and he was,
Was he somebody that you
uh,
knew personally before, or is he somebody
yeah,
that found? Okay, so you just knew a guy.
yeah, I just knew a guy from
Okay.
Facebook really, and he started asking me about, uh, a plot for a adventure module, and I think like an hour later he said, well, you're getting a contract, and I was like, okay, and then it just went from there. So I probably said something right,
Yeah.
or I don't know. I was just trying to help him.
hmm
So and then I had to start writing books and stuff.
So you were just um, so you're just kind of thrown into the deep end there then.
Yeah, but I did have a lot of experience with writing, D&D campaigns and stuff because I've been a game master probably 600 times.
Oh, okay. So
So
just as a D&D gamer.
yeah, so
Okay.
so I know a lot of you know tricks and how to draw a dungeon map and all kinds of stuff.
hmm
And it also helped that I'm a big fan of reading.
Right.
So that's if you don't read, you'll have trouble writing.
Of course, yeah. That's definitely something that I've taken a number of writing courses myself, and that is definitely very common wisdom that is passed on from all instructors.
Yeah, and it's if you play a lot of role playing games as well,
Mm.
like I have done, you're probably better equipped at doing it.
And
Uh,
are you generally pretty focused on D&D, or do you play a lot of other different kinds?
um, well, I'm fed up with D&D.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
since I worked on it, it kind of lost its magic, you know.
Right.
So, but I'll play anything if it's fun and if it has a cool rule system.
Right.
And but at the end of the day, it's who you're playing with. That's the main thing.
Yeah, of course. That's a good point.
Yeah. So any game or board game is fun if you're playing with the right people.
Hmm. So what is kind of the process in terms of writing? Because obviously, even just writing like a book is not really a straightforward process. You don't just start on page one and work your way to page to the finale. So already writing just a straightforward story is not a straightforward process. So I can only imagine what is it like to write a campaign where it's just so many moving parts, where there's so many variables, so many you have to guess what people might want to do. You have to predict people are going to want to troll the game, which is what I do, and you have to kind of often safeguard the game from being broken by jerk players like me.
Well, when you start writing a campaign, what I do is I start with the first scene
Mm,
and then the last scene, and then I start how will they get from being attacked by goblins on the road to defeating the evil wizard at the end.
mm-hmm.
So I start working backwards from the end scene. So
Okay.
yeah, and then I just branch stuff out to to add options for the players and for the DM really.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like a lots of branching,
Right.
very much like those create your own adventure books.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's a lot like that. And the trick is though to always uh, try and make the players feel like they're in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
It, because the every player's story is their own in a role playing game.
That's
It's
yeah,
their
that's right.
characters. So as soon as you put them in the passenger seat, you've done something wrong, I guess.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, actually. That's kind of what I don't like about a lot of games is when they put me into the passenger seat and you kind of just that's why I don't like overly long cutscenes. I know that's a very polarizing topic amongst gamers, but I don't really like that because I'm just sort of like, well, can't I play the game?
Yeah, yeah. It's if you have like long cutscenes in a role playing game where your characters are saying all kinds of stuff, the game has taken control over your character and what
Mm-hmm.
your character says, which isn't that good in a role playing game, but it's perfectly fine if you're playing as an established character, I suppose. Like in the Witcher,
Yeah,
you're not really playing your own character, so it's fine there.
right.
But in games like Dragon Age, maybe not so good.
Yeah, I guess that's true too. It's been a while since I played a game with like a real established character. Um, so sometimes I guess there's just a lot to be said for the execution. I can say one thing and I can think of something that disproves that.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. There's nothing set in stone really.
Hmm.
Uh, at the end
So
of the day, it has to be entertaining and interesting.
yeah,
That's it.
exactly. So as you start working on, as you start getting more and more into these, writing these campaigns, do you find that you sort of become the sole author of this, or do you work with a team?
I worked with the boss who was the you know the guy in charge and really great map maker fellow.
Right.
Um, and I was the lead writer of the campaign book in the end, but I don't know why. It just happened. I probably did the most work on it, and
Right. So are
so it just
you the one responsible for things like game balancing?
no.
No. Okay.
I didn't work with the rules stuff,
Okay.
so I did all the lore. Well, not all of it, but I was mostly a lore writer and a story writer.
Okay.
So I worked a lot on the game world and I worked on the map with the map guy, um,
Which
trying to make sure it looked okay in English Norwegian kind of. something.
Yeah, which I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but from where I sit generally, I personally would find that to be probably the most fun part of the job, anyways.
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely was because as soon as you start working with numbers and rules, then it stops being real, I
Yeah,
guess, and it turns into a game. When you're writing, about lore about a fishing village and all kinds of stuff like that, you have to trick your mind into thinking it's a real place, and then just describing the place and adding population and NPCs and all that. But as soon as you start number crunching, it's just then it turns into something else.
yeah, no, fair enough. I totally get that.
Yeah.
How many of these did you write then?
Uh, I wrote one big one, and then I got writing credits for 3 or 4 other books. But I think that was just because they used stuff I had created and just put them in those books instead because they fit better there.
Oh, okay,
So I really don't remember what I did for the other books. Could be anything. Could be a lot. Could be nothing. I don't know.
right. Oh well.
So we ended up on a huge campaign book with an adventure module at the back, and there was a book about magic and one about barbarians and something else that I can't remember.
Hmm.
So
So, I guess the next thing to think about is did now that you maybe not even just this, but also through your experience as a game master, a D&D game master previously to this, but do you find that this has really colored how you what you look for, what you see when you play games recreationally?
um, not so much that, but
Oh, really?
I've also studied writing. How to craft a plot and all that,
Yeah.
and that can impact my gaming experiences, or even when reading a book, because you can predict the twists and turns a bit.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine.
So yeah, but as far as games go,
So so now
uh,
so when you play like a video game, so computer or console, whichever one you happen to prefer, are RPGs still your are they your favorite game to play?
yeah, I, I think so. Anything with a good story and
Mm-hmm.
interesting characters
But
and
that part, but I guess that would sound like a stupid question, but I just sort of what I'm getting at is that part didn't you didn't burn out on yet.
no,
Oh, okay,
no. Yeah, it's you don't burn out on good stories, I suppose.
true.
But
Because I know you and I have talked quite extensively in the past about uh, you're a big fan of the Might and Magic series. I'm a big we're both big fans of the Ultima games,
yeah,
and I think Ultima 7 is kind of one of the pinnacles of giving the player the driving seat in a role playing game, and almost kind of being sandbox, but I don't know where you kind of where the line is between a sandbox game and a role playing game, but it just as we talked about, there's so much you can do in Ultima 7 that it kind of really doesn't get that old. Like you can still play it today and still have fun with it, just because there's so much you can do.
yeah. It's well, the game world in Ultima 7 is certainly sandboxy. I
Hmm.
mean, you can you can kill the baker and take over his house if you want.
Which I do quite often.
I've heard of this.
Yes.
Uh,
Like I said, I am a jerk player who likes to see what I can get away with in games.
yeah. Well, as for role playing games, what I would consider a good role playing game though is a game that gives you as many options as possible, and not just by options to level up, but also options to cater to your crafting of a personality in a character, I guess.
Hmm. Right.
So It's not all about what you can do in combat, which seems to be the norm these days. You just fight a certain way. If a game also gives you a lot of options outside of combat, which I think is also maybe even more important than combat itself in an RPG. So
Absolutely, because I think well, this is probably common knowledge by now, but I believe that in the original Fallout, there are you can watch videos of people online doing like pretty close to pacifist runs, where they just
yeah,
pretty much talk their way through the entire game.
yeah, and I think Planescape Torment lets you do that as well.
Because you know, I know this is kind of treasonous amongst classic gamers, but I actually have not thoroughly played Planescape Torment. I think I started it a couple times, but never played through it. But from what I understand, it's not even really a very combat centric game at all, is it?
I'm in the same boat as you there.
Oh, okay.
I've just played like a third through it, and then my computer crashed.
Oh,
And then I bought a new computer, and I figured, well 3 years later, I'll try beating the game again. And well, the computer crashed again.
oh no.
So now now I'm afraid of playing it. It costs me money.
Oh, so like
So
crash, like repair shop crash. Like it's not just
no,
the.
dead
Oh
dead
wow.
crash.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
it's not the game crashing. It's like destroying your computer.
yeah. Well, something is. It's not the game destroying it, of course, but
Well, at this
it
point, can you
seems to
even be
happen
sure
when
of
I
that? At this point, can you
yeah.
even be sure of that?
I don't know, but
It's
it
happened
feels like
twice now.
it feels like torment.
Yes. Yes, it does. Okay, so what would be RPG or otherwise? What would be your favorite game of all time,
My,
or not necessarily of all time? However you wish to define favorite game. Maybe it's favorite game now or all time if you actually have a definitive choice.
uh, well, I'd say I have a top five, but that top five keeps changing based on my mood, really.
That's a pretty standard. That's a pretty good.
Yeah.
I should say that's actually a pretty good way to uh, have a favorite game is to have sort of like the top five that kind of consist your favorite games. But okay, so what are they?
Well, Ultima 7 and Might and Magic 6.
Of course,
Um, and hmm, first Monkey Island game,
right.
because that was the first PC game I ever played.
Oh, that was the very first
So,
one.
yeah,
Oh wow, that's a
played the
good place to start.
EGA version on a
Hmm.
black and white screen. Um,
It's definitely a really good place to start. Or is it like maybe gaming just has maybe it took a while to find a game to actually live up to that again.
yes, I went from Monkey Island to other adventure games. I got severely hooked on that genre, really,
Hmm.
because I had a Commodore 64 before that, so most of the games were action platform games,
That's right.
stuff like that. So and suddenly there was my dad brought out an old laptop, really, back from work, and it had Monkey Island on it. And I played it, and it was amazing. There was dialogue, there was a story, and really good graphics, for its time. So
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think Monkey Island is regarded as one of the best EGA games for graphics.
yeah, yeah, probably. So
So you said that.
yeah,
So obviously you're a huge adventure game fan. So as soon as someone says that, of course the obvious question is, I'm going to put you on. I am absolutely putting you on the spot on this one. Sierra or LucasArts?
um,
If you had to choose one, Sophie's choice.
I'd pick Sierra because they had more of a variety.
Okay.
Most of the Lucas Arts games tend to be, humorous, I suppose,
Right.
while the Sierra ones had a bit of everything, and there were so many different settings. I suppose, yeah, had like a police Police Quest, which was modern day,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had Larry, which was basically a comedy,
Yeah.
and King's Quest and Quest for Glory, which had a tremendous amount of replay value,
Oh God, yeah. I.
and you got your sci-fi through Space Quest.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the Lucas Arts games were maybe better designed
Yeah.
because they didn't have any dead ends.
Yeah, because that's always kind of like been a big check in their column, and one of the big debates in terms of adventure games is should we let characters, or should we, sorry, not characters but players, should we let players dig themselves into a hole? Should we let players die for their mistakes? Because
Yeah, and usually a mistake you did half a game ago.
yeah,
You didn't pick up the acorn or something.
yeah,
So
since
then you
Thimbleweed Park, I believe, actually like came out and said, very rather fourth wall breaking, where they actually just came out and said like, no, people should not be able to die or get into dead ends in an adventure game. It's supposed to be challenging without having to rely on that sort of stuff.
I like the Sierra deaths though.
I know, and
They,
that's kind of why I'm sort of Sierra, is because I actually like those consequences.
yeah, but I wouldn't say I was a huge fan of having played for a week, getting near the end, and then I had to do it again because I forgot about the acorn or something near
Yeah,
the
yeah.
start of the game. But croaking from drinking from a puddle of acid and whatever else in Space Quest was just fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's really cool to find the different ways to die, and that's kind of one of the cool things I like about Quest for Glory series, is that for the most part you can't. It's really hard to accidentally die. Like if you usually when you die, you in some way deserve it. They'll either project it or warn you, or you could have guessed, or you're being a jerk, or you'll run out of hit
Yeah,
points. Like there will be some way to know that you did something to earn that death.
yeah. The Quest for Glory games did it better.
Mm-hmm.
They're almost like a mix between Sierra and LucasArts games, though.
In a
And,
certain way, I can see that.
yeah. Um, so yeah, that's a cool thing about them, and also they added more options to solve puzzles
Mm-hmm, that's right.
than the other Sierra games, I think. So
For Sierra games, for sure.
yeah, yeah,
One of the cool things about Maniac Mansion is that even though it was, that's a really early game in the life of adventure games,
yeah,
and in the life of LucasArts in general. I can't remember exactly where it came in, but that's a very early game, and that what blew me away about that one was that there was just so many different ways. There's that whole cast of characters that you can play, and there's so many different ways you can solve puzzles. There's so many different ways you can finish the game. It was, it's mind blowing for its time. What did it fit on? Like what, one floppy disk?
I think it was on one floppy disk.
Mm-hmm. And it was just there was so
Um,
much replayability, so much game to it. There was so many options and things you could do.
yeah, and the mansion itself um, was a fantastic location for a game,
Oh, absolutely.
which which is why settings are important. Um, because the game world or the setting should function as a character on its own.
That's a very good
It
point.
it should have a personality and unique traits and immersion, and it also needs to make sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What is your favorite location in a game if you have one, or or
My
whatever's
favorite
that, or even just off the top of your head? You don't. You're not. We're not going to hold you accountable to this for forever.
my favorite location in a game. Um,
Or setting,
oh,
however you want
that's
to.
easy.
Okay.
The first screen on Loom.
Oh, good
That
one.
Yeah, that peak with a little tree next to it.
Yeah.
And Bobbin is sitting there waking up, he's falling asleep and stuff. And if you look at the view when you get to see the whole island,
Mm-hmm.
it's a perfectly superb place to fall asleep, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can just
Uh,
sit there and look at the stars and maybe ships passing by, and
there's just so
which is
much. There's just so much
yeah,
instant atmosphere to that game.
Yeah,
It instantly hits you with just and even at the beginning, what really is it? Sort of, you're on a rocky cliff. There's a tree, some sky, but it's so minimal, but it's just so effective, right?
yeah, and the first thing it says, if you click the leaf, it falls, and it says, last leaf of the year or something, which is foreshadowing big time
Mm-hmm.
the
That's
rest
right.
of the game. Things are maybe coming to an end.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So they nailed the start of that game.
Yeah, no, that's right.
So
That's kind of that's a good point. That is kind of uh, all each of the different locations, because there are quite a few and very unique from each other, but each one of them is very are different characters throughout the game for
yeah,
sure.
every well, faction, I suppose, in that game has a very unique um, society, I suppose.
Yeah, the I would even say the locations have a lot more character than a lot of the actual characters in that game.
Yeah, for sure. Which is also a thing that the Quest for Glory games does really well, especially if you play the VGA version.
Yeah,
You can ask characters in the game about locations,
yeah, that's right.
which really fleshes the setting out. You can ask someone about the waterfall, and they tell you about the waterfall, and yeah, so it's not just a waterfall; it actually has a name. That's always more cool, I think, because that makes you want to go there and have a look, especially if there's a mystery to the location.
I remember the first Heroes Quest. My brothers and I would play it when we were I was very young, at any rate, and we were. It took us a good while, probably like a couple days at that time, given all the how slow our computer was. That's no small point in all this, but also it took us a good long while before we could actually find Irana's piece. But everyone talked about it, so we really wanted to find it. So it was just really cool that there's this place that, like, okay, where is this place that everyone keeps talking about?
Yeah, and that's also one of my favorite locations in gaming. I think
For sure.
I always thought the EGA versions looked cooler due to the artwork,
Mm-hmm.
more heart and soul, I suppose. But as far as gameplay, the VGA versions had well, they had these icons which made things simpler, but I think they benefited the most um, when it came to the conversation system, because
Right.
you could just click and you'd ask, and sometimes you'd get options you'd never think about.
That is true as
While
well.
in the old typing versions, you had to make a lot of trial and error and guesswork, really.
Yeah. And you can tell
So
that a lot of these games really were aware of that as an issue, and so they always found ways to um, try to solve that. In Ultima 6, it was not quite a point and click interface, or at least not a very refined or polished one. So a lot of it was typing in what you wanted to talk to people about. And of course, they would highlight the keywords that you're allowed to ask about in case you didn't think of it. But they would say, like,
yeah,
they would talk about it. There would be a keyword and it'll be highlighted in red, and you know that that's something that you can ask about. Or you can also ask them about something which you thought of that maybe they'll happen to know. Type in a
yeah,
character's name and maybe they know that person.
yeah. I remember having a notebook next to me with keywords written down in them when I played Ultima 6,
Mm-hmm.
for that very reason, really. And well, Ultima 6 was kind of like the last game in between there, before everything became point and click.
Yeah, especially in the Ultima series for sure.
Yeah, it was like the hybrid of
Yeah, because they you could see that they were trying to incorporate point and click, but they didn't quite let go of. Or, I mean, they were predominantly keyboard and typing, but you can see that there was an effort to try to integrate a lot of point and click into it as well.
yeah, and a lot of developers back there were pioneering everything.
Oh,
They
absolutely.
were coming up with new ways to make games constantly, uh, which is something that's kind of gone now.
Mm-hmm.
Um Now most games seems to just emulate other games, and I don't think there's been anything really innovating being released the last 4 or 5 years, as far as I can tell.
Um, I'm sure you can find probably a few things on the indie scene, but
Yeah,
definitely the AAA market has really kind of, they have that catch 22 of they only really copy the successful games,
yeah,
and therefore that's, they find the formula that only kind of works, and they basically just kind of have this ongoing feedback loop where they just kind of like, oh, this is successful, therefore we're going to copy that, and since that was successful, we're going to copy that, and they're basically just the mouth talking into its own ear.
yeah, and you can see it in the game box designs as well.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every first person shooter game has this guy standing in the middle of the artwork with something burning behind him.
Yeah,
This that's it.
yeah,
So it's even the game box design has gotten stale.
yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I mean, that was one of the beauties of the big box games of the past, was the creativity. Like it was part of the art. It was part of the part of the part of the experience itself was the big box that the games came in.
Yeah, and you could tell that there was a lot of work having been put into everything in it. You you had like a huge box with some really good artwork on it, and you got cool manuals with all kinds of illustrations in them and lots of lore, and felt more like a you bought a big product really.
Mm-hmm.
Now you just get a DVD cover with a disc in it, and there's a manual and a PDF on it.
If you even get the manual,
Yeah,
because it's at the point where a lot of them just say like, yeah, there's the manual's on the disc, just find it in there.
yeah, and a lot of the times they don't even add that. They just force you to play it through a tutorial for an
Oh
hour.
right, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, which I hate it. I really do. Especially if you want to replay a game, and
yeah,
the tutorial is part of the story, really, like the first chapter,
yeah.
and you
Well,
can't turn it off.
there's there's right and wrong ways to do tutorials though, because
Yeah,
obviously between the two of us we're going to keep going back to Ultima 7 quite a bit, but Ultima 7 had a wonderful tutorial that didn't even, no one knew it was a tutorial because it was just a really good part of the game.
yeah. What's the first city?
Yeah,
That was the tutorial. You had to solve a murder, and um,
and basically in order to progress through the game you had to solve that murder, so you had to figure out how to talk to people, how to ask about things, how to report on things, how to observe things. Like it basically trained you without you really realizing it. It was training you how to play the game from that point forward.
yeah, yeah. That's completely true. Oh,
But then you
I
get
remember
something
that.
like, but then you get some, oh sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but then you get
No, no,
something like
it's okay.
um if I recall correctly, it's been like 10 years since I played it, but I think it was Neverwinter Nights, where it was a very obvious tutorial where the character, and this is a big pet peeve of mine, is when characters will actually tell you what buttons to press in character.
Yeah,
Like they will
breaks
say,
the fourth wall.
yeah, and they're not even trying. It's not even like a smug wink to the audience. They'll just be like, okay, in order to attack that thing, press C to it
Yeah,
to start combat. And it's like, why are you telling me like this?
yeah. It's like someone in Neverwinter is aware
Yeah,
that he's being controlled by some person behind a screen.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That was a horrible way to do it.
Yeah,
Really.
that's always my least favorite because, and that's one, um, again, as you were getting into, when you want to when you want to replay these, it those you just those are the worst parts of the game that you just do not
Yeah,
want to replay.
yeah, it certainly hampers the replay value because you have to go through that. Um, the Elder Scrolls do that as well a bit because they stuff you into a dungeon where you have to use all the skills.
Hmm.
And you have to get through that in order to start the game. So there's always an area where you have to sneak, and there's a
That's
lock
right.
you have to pick, and you know stuff like that.
Which,
I don't think Morrowind had it though, but Oblivion and Skyrim certainly did.
yeah, and I can't remember exactly how they do it because I'm at that point where I don't really replay RPGs anymore because they're just so long and big. Um, but I do know that there's it's not so bad when there's just a place they give you a location that requires you to do this to do things and you have to figure it out versus those games where you get to a spot and you're interrupted by a dialogue window saying like, okay, so now you have to sneak past this guard, so do that by sticking to the shadows and pressing this button.
Yeah, that's I don't know. Stuff like that just takes me out of the game.
Of course, yeah.
I want to get immersed. I want to feel like I'm in a real fantasy world.
Yeah.
And when they keep reminding me that I'm playing a game, it takes me out of it.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree, and it's kind of annoying because it's almost kind of condescending in certain ways. But I don't know. You would think that game designers would know this sort of thing, so it kind of makes you wonder if it's kind of deliberate. Like, are they just counting on that many people who cannot figure this stuff out on their own?
I think it's a thing that has popped up in the last 10 years where they always want to cater to a bigger market, right?
Yeah,
More customers, and they just want to make it accessible to new players, which is perfectly fine. But they seem to assume that the new player has never touched a computer or a console before. So
yeah,
it's like those, if you had like computer classes at school when you were a kid,
of
and
course,
they were
yeah,
teaching you what the space button did.
yeah.
It feels kind of like that in some games.
For sure. And I just kind of wonder to myself sometimes, though, too, is sort of like, well, just because they're new gamers, like, isn't this kind of still kind of insulting that they can't, to expect that they can't figure it out? Like, can't you just, just because someone's new to gaming, does that necessarily mean you should treat them like they know nothing?
Yeah, and also if people buy games, right, especially kids, they buy them because they want to play them and they want to learn how to play the game, and they do that just by playing. I've been playing some old games with my nephew recently. I've been babysitting him, and I don't have to explain anything to him. I
Hmm.
just tell him, if you press this button, you open doors and stuff, and that one makes you shoot stuff,
Right.
and the rest he just figures out himself. He's just completely proficient after 5 minutes,
Yeah. There's
and then
a,
he beats me, of course.
of
So
course, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a lot like how you treat new players when you play D&D as well. People who haven't played it before, you just start off the game in a safe zone, really, and let them use their skills and stuff like that, so they get into all the dices and yeah, stuff like that.
Hmm. Well, anyways, I think that's about all the time we have for today. But thank you very much for joining us. For joining me, rather, as if I am not multiple people, unfortunately. Thanks for coming by, and thanks for the chat.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I hope I made some sense in between.
I think you made more sense than I did.
I don't know. We'll let the guild people decide.
Well, I'd love to have you back one of these days, at any rate. So yeah,
Okay.
but thank you very much for thanks for coming by. Thanks for talking games.